Greetings everyone, I'm coming to you from my 2000 Mercedes-Benz CLK320 Cabriolet. So I thought it was time for an update video. I have owned this for 6 months now, just about, give or take. I haven't driven it extensively during that 6 months, but I have driven it regularly, at least once a week, especially in the warmer weather when you can put the top down. But when that opportunity doesn't strike, I still make sure to drive it once a week. Today's that day for this week. Thought I'd take it out on a spin and give everybody who might be interested an update and what my experience over the past 6 months has been. So right now we're sitting at 64811 for the mileage. It had 62060 when I got it, so I've put about 2,800 miles on it. When I first got it, it had a few, I'm going to call them minor issues. I made some videos about it before, but basically it had a bad accelerator pedal position sensor, which I replaced. It was pretty easy. Bad brake light switch, also pretty easy. And one thing that's nice about the top in the first gen CLK is it's got a manual handle here and cables to open the front of it, so you can't have any leaks coming to the front of the car. I believe it's a simpler system overall because of that. But the two cables that come up, oh, I'm gonna get out of the way here. Very narrow, essentially one lane road. The two cables that come up to the top of the hood were broken. It still worked like that, but you had to help it get started, and then you had to hold it from slamming down. So I replaced those, and then as a preventative, there wasn't any signs of leaking, I replaced the transmission connector, which drained out about a quart of fluid. I can't even remember what color the fluid was that came out of there, but it wasn't black. It was maybe like a light brown or something. So worst case, I just swapped out 1 quart of fluid. I'm guessing this car had a transmission oil change at 40,000 miles. I bought it from the original owner. He told me he watched it roll off the truck and it had like 9 miles on it or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. And he owned it for, I don't know, 22 years? 23 years, something like that, and he finally decided he wanted to get a truck. So I saw this on the side of the road with a for sale sign on it. Now I know he knew, he kind of hinted that it needed some stuff. He basically told me it was as is, and you know, I knew the fundamentals were there. The transmission was shifting properly, the engine was working properly. I redlined it once on the test drive. Just basically observed everything, made sure the fundamentals were there, and yeah, it's you know, within the first couple weeks I got everything fixed, and since then it has been completely reliable. In the 6 months I've owned it, I have had 0 issues with it. This era of Mercedes-Benzes often gets a bad rap. Now, I know this car hasn't been driven in the salt or anything, so the underside is pristine. I don't think there's actually any corrosion whatsoever. I'll drive it in the rain once in a while, sort of such as today. But I will not drive it in the snow. Plus these cars are going to be horrible in the snow anyway. So let's do a real quick on these wet leaves here. We're real quick traction control test. working its magic and seeing the thing flash. I'm gonna do another test up here, because when I drive my CLK right up here, this one downhill stretch, and I put the brakes on in the wet, it acts like there's no traction. So I'm gonna determine if it's a tire issue. Did I say CLK? I meant GLK. Or if it's an actual road issue. So right up in here, I'm gonna hit the brakes right here. I guess it's not quite as slick to this car, because it did stop a little bit better, but it's still a little bit slick. So what I think is going on there, on that section of road right back there, there's a lot of I don't know, oil, diesel, whatever. Out these back roads here where I live, there's a lot of gas wells, and there's a lot of trucks that drive on these roads, which carry all the chemicals and stuff like that. So I'm guessing a lot of that is from the leaking. Even right here, it's slick. Huh, that's interesting. That triggered the phone to kick in. And I actually can't remember if it kicked in when I first started the car or not. But overall, yeah, this car has been completely reliable. One part about this that is a little more complex than the other CLK I had the refresh version of the CLK for the first time, and it had the hydraulic lines and stuff coming to the front for the top, but it was way easier to get to the reservoir. And I actually replaced one of the hydraulic struts in that car. I had to work around an airbag. Actually, I had to get an airbag out, so that was a little scary. I don't think this car has rear airbags, so it would be easier to do. But to get to where the reservoir is to check the fluid level in this car is a bit more complicated, because it's kind of buried under a few sheets of metal and a bunch of bolts and screws and stuff. So I haven't checked it yet. The top has been operating just fine. Occasionally, I guess maybe I have had a couple little glitches, like sometimes the switch for the top doesn't kick in on the first try. Usually I just shut the car off, restart it, and then it's fine. And then I think I had that issue with one of the windows, and then it stopped working and then started working again. I mean, that's all to be expected on a, let's see what now, 23-year-old car. And you know, other than that, I would hop in this car and drive it across the country right now. Now, I have not changed the oil since I've purchased the car. If I click this here, it still shows a mile countdown. If I can get it to focus. I don't think it's focusing. Oh, sorry about that. It's like 5,700 miles or something like that. So I think the oil change was done fairly recently, at least in the past year. I mean, oil's not just going to go bad in 1 year. And I looked at it on the dipstick. The level's good. The color is kind of a medium brown. I mean, it's probably fine. So I'll probably eventually change the oil, maybe next spring or something like that. I may go ahead and do that. And I did change the coolant, and it turns out the guy told me he never did any of that. He told me he never changed the brake fluid, never changed the coolant. It turns out he actually did have that stuff done, and maybe he just wasn't paying attention, because when I changed the coolant, it actually came out almost blue. So number one, that tells me they have put the the newer coolant in, which just came out a few years ago. And it wasn't in there for very long because it was still kind of blue. I mean, it was more on the side of black, but it was way less black than the coolant that came out of my GLK. So it probably actually wasn't even due, but it's nice that I had that done. I have good heat and everything. Nothing untoward came out of the radiator when I drained it. It was a very easy job. I didn't do anything really special for bleeding it. I think I just basically ran the defroster and maybe squeezed the upper radiator hose a few times, left the system open for a while and topped it up to let the air burp out of it, and eventually started getting heat out of the top vents. And then once you get the heat out of the top vents, that's a really good sign that you have the air out of the system. I kept my eye on the temperature gauge. It's been good. Yeah, I think other than that, that's all I've done to this car. I bought it pretty cheap. Didn't have to put a lot of money into it. I don't know, maybe $500 all in. The most expensive was the cables for the top. That was close to $200, I think. Everything else was anywhere between $50 and $100 for the sensors. The brake sensor was like $15. What else? Yeah, the suspension has been tight. I passed my state inspection in June, and they're pretty strict where I go. I particularly choose one shop that does the inspections because they're very strict and they check everything. So I know my brakes are good, my suspension is good, and all the lights work and horn works and stuff like that. So this car's in really good shape. You know, there are deals like this out there. You gotta look for them. This car actually was for sale for a few days before I spotted it, so I'm surprised it wasn't snapped up by somebody. The guy told me that he had one person look at it that was apparently homeless. I guess he just wanted a joyride or something. I don't know if the guy ended up actually letting him take a test drive or not. And then, of course, he said he liked it, and when it came time to actually coughing up the money, well, there was none to be found. Yeah, when I drove it, I was ready to go. Guy didn't want to negotiate very much, but I actually don't blame him. He was asking $6,500 for it, and I did talk him down to $6,250. Now, these CLKs on the auction sites have been dropping in value quite a bit, because I used to see these during the early part of the year. I'm sure it's a seasonal thing. They would regularly bring 12 to 15,000, and we had a big issue here. Get out of the way of these cars and trucks. Okay. It's always on this turn too that I encounter somebody. But yeah, so whatever I was saying, I get sidetracked and I lose my train of thought. But yeah, I paid $6,250 for this, and yeah, the auction prices are dropping. I saw one recently sell, similar year. I don't know the condition. I didn't look at the details, but it had 79,000 miles in it. It pulled 8,000. So, I mean, even when I do sell this, no matter how long it is from now, and no matter how many miles I put on it, assuming that it just requires regular maintenance and nothing else, I'm sure it won't cost me anything to drive. Even if I sold it right now, I could probably make a small profit on it, but I'm going to hold on to it. It is a good, solid, reliable car. It's very it's very nice to drive, very enjoyable, surprisingly quiet given that it's a soft top, and it's not like brimming with character like some of the really older Benzes from the 70s and 80s, but it still does have some old school touches. Let's see, I gotta look and see if anybody's coming. This tachometer is very old school Benz, so it's a nice carryover, and it looks like the font on the speedometer is very similar to what they use. I don't love the actual design of the speedometer because it's kind of too big compared to what I'm used to on these older Benzes, but I mean, it's fine. And the other interesting thing is, I don't know if I can get it captured very well on the video, but the wood has faded at different rates, so some of it's lighter than others. I doubt the car came like that from the factory, but who knows? I mean, it's been kept in a garage. That's part of why this thing has been so well preserved all this time. See that area right there, I just hit the brakes pretty hard, and the ABS did kick in a little bit, but not too much. So I think it's just that one section of road that's just extra slick. It's going to be interesting when I get my winter tires on the GLK and stop on a very cold surface there. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, those are my updates on this car. I would absolutely recommend one of these to anybody. Of course, I mean, you have to evaluate the actual car, your starting point, what it needs, and how much of it you can do yourself. Some of the stuff that I did, you know, if I were to have a dealer do that 500 would have probably turned into 2,500 easy, not 3,000. Yeah, parts can cost several times what you can get them aftermarket, and they have some crazy labor rates. So yeah, there's just only very few things that I have the dealer do. It's just stuff that I either can't or really don't want to do. But everything on this car, like I mentioned, was easy. Okay, well, I've been rambling for quite a bit. If you've made it this far, hope you enjoyed my rambling, and have a great day, everyone.